Hey there, Ride the Car Guy here, and today we get the heads installed on our VK. It's been a long time coming. The heads were at the machine shop for an excruciating 10 weeks. So they're finally back. What they did while they were there was they went ahead and they decked the mating surface, of course. They reground all of the valve seats and all the valves, and made sure all the valve clearances were good up at the cams. If you've been watching the video series, while the heads were still being worked on, we reassembled the block, got our crank in, and got all of our pistons set into place. So now the block's ready to receive the heads, and that's what we're doing today. Now, if you're looking to catch up on the series, go ahead and click in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, where I have a playlist of all of the previous videos leading up to this point. Now, before we get started, I want to let you know a couple things I did off camera. First of all, as you can see, I of course painted the block. We talked about that in the last video. I'm actually not going to paint the heads. We'll talk about that in a second, but it just doesn't seem worth it. I also reinstalled the plugs, the block plugs. There's two up front, two on the side, one in the rear. The ones up front are 46 foot-pounds, and you need some thread sealant on it. I'll of course put the thread sealant on the screen here. And I would do the thread sealant on all of it, by the way, not just the front. And the two on the side, one requires a new washer, one does not. It's just a good old, sort of like a little bolt that you slide in there. And the one on the rear also requires a washer and thread sealant as well. I also installed the knock sensors since it was easy and they were just sitting around. Those just go in at 16 foot-pounds, and it's simple enough to just kind of keep out of the way. So let's go grab our new gasket kit, take a look at our heads, and I'll show you the procedure on how to mate the cylinder head to the block. Now, if you send your heads off, they're likely going to come back assembled. And they do that because they have to throw the cams in to check all the valve clearances. So what we're going to do first is pull all of the caps off, pull off the cams, set them aside, and we're going to install the heads without the cams. And well, we do that for obvious reasons, mostly because you'll see the actual holes that the head bolts go through are underneath the cams. So it's literally impossible to install without taking them out. Everything's going to be 10 millimeter, so just pop these all off. They were probably put down to spec to make sure the clearances were right, so make sure you take them out in the right order, which of course is this. All right, once they're broken loose, I'm just going to spin them out with a drill to make it quick. Now they should all be in order, and of course we're going to verify that before we actually do the install, but just pull them out and set them in the correct order, the order that you pull them off. All right, just carefully lift them out. Heads disassembled. Make sure that, I'll probably go through one more time and just blow it out with some air, and then we'll just clean these real good before we do our final install, but everything is looking pretty great. Next up, we want to grab our head gaskets and make sure we get the one that's for the correct side. The beauty is that they're different, so you really can't get it wrong. And like for instance, you have this, so you literally can't put it this way. You have to put it that way once you install it on the block. So you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Make sure that's available, and we're going to go back through one more time and make sure that this surface is very clean and free of any contaminants, and that of course the block surface is the same, nice and clean. Once those are nice and clean, we're going to set down our gasket, set our head on, and then we'll talk about how to tighten up all the bolts. Now when we're going through and we're doing our last check of the mating surface, I'm going to start on the left-hand side, and we want to make sure that the number one piston is in top dead center. And the beauty is we can actually see the piston, right? So if this first piston is not at the very, very top of the cylinder, you want to rotate your crankshaft and make sure that it is. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let's go get our head gasket and set it down on here. All right, from here, we grab our head gasket. And again, you'll see, for instance, on the left-hand side of the motor, you have this little guy here. It's not over here on the other side, so you know that this is the correct one. And you know that it has to sit like this. Can't sit like this, and it can't sit like this. So we have these little pins here, little guide pins, little dowels, whatever you want to call them, and we snap that head gasket on over top of those dowels so it sits in the right place. Awesome. There we go. Now what we can do, we can actually go ahead and just give this a little spin here. There we go. A little bit easier to work on. Now same story on your head. Make sure that the surface is nice and clean, free of any contaminants. All right, I feel pretty good about it, so we're gonna grab this and set it down. You wanna be really careful when setting it down. Try to get those pins in there on the first go. There's one. And the other is right there. Okay. Huh. Let's see what this is doing here. It's not sitting directly in the pin here. There it goes. Perfect. All right. Make sure it looks even all the way around. It's looking pretty good. I'm probably just going to grab a mallet and tap it a little bit, make sure it's fully seated here. Make sure your mallet's clean if you're going to do this. Just eye a little bit, look around, go all the way around it, make sure nothing looks wonky. I don't really anticipate anything looking strange here, but if it does, then you can do something about it, kind of reset it. And then once it looks good, let's go grab our bolts, we'll get them in, and we'll start torquing them down. Now for our cylinder head bolts, they're going to be a little bit different, especially if you have an older Titan or an older Armada and you're taking it apart. You're going to have the bolts that, well, the bolts that we removed earlier in the series. And when you buy them, they're actually going to be a completely different bolt. So it's a little annoying because you need to buy one bit to remove the old bolts and another bit to install the new ones. To install the new bolts, they're going to be an E20, so a size 20 external Torx bit. When you're installing these, you want to have just a little bit of engine oil on the threads and on the seating surface of the actual bolt. It's apparently for proper torquing, so make sure you do that. Don't like dip them in oil, don't soak them, but just get a little bit on the threads, a little bit on the seating surface, and then drop in all, what is it? All 10 of them, and then we're going to go through the torquing process. All right, guys, this is a 5-step process. We need to tighten them, then loosen them, and then tighten them 3 more times. And so we're going to start by taking all of the bolts in this order and tightening them down to 72 foot-pounds. Let's start with that, and then we're going to back them all out and do it all over again. So let's get this at 72. All right, starting here. Last one. Awesome. All right. So now that they are all down to 72, I'm just taking another peek, making sure nothing looks weird. Everything's fine. Now in reverse order, go ahead and loosen them all. It's arm day, fellas. I'm not going to make you sit there and watch me loosen and tighten these all over again. We're just going to talk through the rest here and then get to the fun part. So loosen them all. Make sure they're all loosened. Once they're all loosened in reverse order of tightening them, then go back through and tighten them all down to 33 foot-pounds. Once that's accomplished, we need to go back through 2 more times. We're going to need our angle tool for that. We're going to do 60-degree turn all the way through 1 through 10, 60 degrees, and then go back through again 1 through 10, another 60 degrees, and that's going to mate our cylinder head to our block. To use our tool, we want to grab our little angle tool, get it on bolt number 1, of course, and then we want to clamp it somewhere. I'm just going to clamp it on the little inlet here for the thermostat housing, or excuse me, the water pump housing. And then once it's clamped, turn it. So start to turn it the direction that you're going to be tightening it and kind of get it under some tension. We're still going to hold it with our left hand when we go to, crank it, but it's a lot easier to have some tension under it so that way it's less likely to move. Then when you're ready, we're going to loosen our little dial here, set it to 0, right there. There we go. And now I'm going to grab my breaker bar, not my torque wrench, and I'm going to turn this 60 degrees. Excellent. There's 60 degrees. I'm going to move it to bolt number 2, find another place to clamp, and do it again. I'm just going to use, looks like a exhaust stud will work just fine. Continue this process until you get through all 10. All right, guys, once you have all 10 down to 60 degrees, do it again. Nice. Well, it wasn't super easy, but we now have it done. We have the left-hand cylinder head mated to the block, and now we need to start working on our camshafts. Now, I had previously gone through and cleaned and lubricated these. If you need to do that, make sure you get that done before moving on to the next step. I just used mineral spirits, then went through and hit it all with Permatex Ultra Slick. That's the assembly lube I'm using. I'm probably going to put a little bit more on it, mostly because this is probably going to continue to sit for a little while before we finally get around to turning it over. So I'm going to put a little bit more on there. Don't go crazy on this stuff. A little bit goes a long way, and you don't want to, gum up your engine oil filter the second you start it with a bunch of assembly lube. Once you do have it all cleaned and lubed, we're going to grab our cam. We can start, it doesn't really matter what one we start on, but we're going to grab them, set them down, and get the caps on. So grab your cam. You want to start it, well, this little key here, this actually needs to end up being in the up position. But for now, you can kind of drop it in and just rotate a little bit just to get some of that lubrication all over the actual pins here. And so it looks like here that if this pin is at the very top, then this cylinder here, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, cylinder 5 is going to have their valves pushed down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'll put it in place here, and that way we can put the caps on and feel okay kind of cinching them down, and then we'll rotate it to the left when we go to install it, meaning you certainly don't want to rotate to the right, because then you're going to start pushing your valves on cylinder 1 down, which you absolutely don't want to do, right? Because cylinder 1 is at top dead center. I'm just going to drop a little bit of lube into the cam caps and then set them down on here. Now make sure when you're doing this, 2 things. Make sure you're putting them in the correct location. So I'm looking at cam cap A, and you want to be able to read the letter from the intake side. So from here, you want A. So I'm going to flip it like this and then set it down. Push it on, get it to seat here. Come on, there we go. Awesome. And then do that with the rest of the caps. Here's B, and again, you want it so you can read it from the intake side. I'm just running a couple threads in just so the lubricant doesn't make it into the holes. On cam cap D, you really only need to lubricate where the actual cam is spinning. This side, of course, is going to be where it gets oil. So we're going to pause here, and we're going to go do the same on the other cam, because what we're going to do is we're going to install the front cam cover first, and that way, obviously you need both in there when you do that. So go back through, repeat that process on this side, get it ready, and then we'll put the front cam cap on and then tighten everything down. Now, when I'm setting this one down, it wants it in, like I said, wants the pin all the way up. With the pin all the way up, these lobes are all the way down. So I'm not going to put the cam caps down and force them down. So again, if we rotate it a little bit, if you remember back to when we were putting the head on or before the head was on, these 3 cylinders are down, and the front one is the one that's up. We can push these down the slightest bit. They're only going to go down a tiny bit when we put these on. So I'm going to put it in this position, basically match it, and then when it's ready, we're going to be able to turn it to put the timing chains on. So get it in this position, get the cam as low as possible inside of the journals, and then we're going to go grab our caps and put them on. This one starts with E, and again, you want to read it from the intake side, and then put it on, put those 4 in. Now, since we have to technically sort of push this down or push down some springs on our valves, we want to slowly put the cam caps in, and I'm just going to slowly kind of do a couple revolutions here, a couple revolutions here, until the cam caps sit on the top of the head. Hope that makes sense. Once we've done that, this should theoretically rotate pretty easily. There we go. Awesome. I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm just going to get the cam caps to touch the cylinder head, make sure they're nice and flat, and then we'll be good to go. Make sure that still rotates freely. Awesome. This one is going to feel different because it's under tension, right? So right now, it's sort of between. It has some springs pushed down over here, and these springs pushed down as well. So it's kind of fighting itself, but that's all right. We know that we're safe to turn it this direction when we go to install it, and same with this one. Turn it this direction when we go to install it. All that's going to do is push down valves on pistons that are, or on cylinders where the pistons are lower down, and then these are the ones, again, that we really do not want to push down. Let's go grab our number 1 cam cap, and we're going to need to put a little bit of RTV on it and get this sucker installed. Alrighty, we have our front cam cap. And as you know, this is part of the, basically where the front cover goes on, and then this is where your valve cover is going to sit. So you want to make sure a few things. We're going to end up putting RTV right here. So you want to make sure that these are cleaned out, which I clearly haven't done yet. Make sure both those are cleaned out. Make sure this whole surface is clean. And of course that these are clean and well lubricated before you go put them on. All right, that one's looking pretty good. Scrape it all out. Let's go grab our RTV and install it. So we have our bolts ready. Then we're going to, I'm going to grab a little bit of lubricant, get these nice and lubed. Okay, way too much on that. Okay, that's good. Grab a clean paper towel somewhere. Clean off that surface. This one as well. Excellent. Now we're going to grab RTV and we're going to put it right here, basically following these grooves. We want it to go up this groove a little bit here, and then in this one as well. So we want to have those surfaces covered. Once you have RTV in there, we're going to go ahead and set it down and get them screwed in. All right, we have our RTV. Let's make sure we get some out of here. Come on. There, perfect. All right. Lay it on here. Excellent. Looks like we might want to draw some up here. There we go. All right. Super sloppy job, but I'm going to clean a little bit up before we go. The idea is you don't want any in here, right? Because this is an oil galley. So just be careful. The rest we can just sort of wipe up. Up here doesn't really matter because you can just wipe from both sides over there. But over here, you got to be more careful. Okay. Just going to grab a little pick here, push it over. All right, let's go put it on. Grab it here. Make sure these are good. Don't want to leave any schmutz in there. All right, it's all good. And then go ahead and set it down. Excellent. We're going to grab our bolts, set them down in here. Go through and clean the sides of any RTV that comes out. So if you see little bits here, for instance, you want that cleaned up, and on the front as well. What you'll find is a little bit later on, we're going to end up doing more RTV right here for when we install our valve covers. All right, once these are finger tight and you've cleaned up those edges, we need to let it sit for an hour. Once we let it sit for an hour, then we can come back and tighten everything down to spec. All right, it's been an hour. We're going to go ahead and tighten these down. Now we're going to start with the front, and those are bolts 9 through 12, and then we're going to go back through and do the rest. So I'll of course show you on the screen here, but we want to do 17 inch-pounds on 9 through 12. So let's start by doing that. Here we go. Excellent. And now we want to do 1 through 8 at 17 inch-pounds. You can do both cams at once, no big deal. Next we go 1 through 12, so all of the bolts now, and I say that meaning 1 through 12 on both sides, right? So we do 52 inch-pounds for one round, and then we do it all over again at 92 inch-pounds. All right, and then last round at 92. If you get any excess RTV to come out when you do this final torquing, just make sure you wipe it up, make sure it's nice and clean, because again, we need to have that surface ready for the next round of RTV when we basically put on other parts. Now, everything we just did, we got to go do it again. That's right, of course we have our entire right-hand side of the engine that we need to go repeat this entire process on. Certainly not doing that tonight, also not going to do it on camera. When I see you next, we're going to be working on the timing, and if there's anything different about the right side, I'll certainly let you know when we get there, but I don't think there's going to be. Just repeat that exact same process, get it all installed, and then let's knock out this timing. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video. As promised, I'm trying to make this series into smaller, little more digestible videos, if you will. So next week we tackle the timing, and then once we have the timing done, we're going to go ahead and just start reassembling the engine. Basically just put everything back on the way that we took it off. If you liked this video, which I certainly hope that you did, go ahead and scroll down and click that like button. If you want more content like this, or if you want to just, of course, follow along with this build, make sure you scroll down and click subscribe. If you really love this video and you feel like it saved you some time or money, you want to say thanks, just go ahead and scroll down, click that thanks button, and send me a super thanks. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.